aircraft, but I'm going to concentrate at the beginning here and talk a little bit about where the F-35 is in the Marine Corps service. So right now, we currently have 4 squadrons in the Marine Corps flying this airplane. We have VMF-AT 501, that's our operational conversion unit down at Marine Corps Air Station Buford, which Lieutenant Commander Hogg is part of. We've got VMF-A 121 out at Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, and that's our first operational squadron. They declared IOC back last summer. Then we've got VMX-1, that's our Marine Corps Operational Test and Evaluation Squadron, which I'm part of, up at Edwards Air Force Base, which is embedded in a joint operational test environment up there with the UK, the Air Force, the Navy, the Dutch, and the Australians are all part of that up there. So a joint initial operational test and evaluation construct. And then finally, and just very recently, the other day, we stood up VMF-A 211 at Marine Corps Air Station Yuma. That's our second operational squadron. And so they're in the process of getting up to their full operational perspective, and they're going to be our primary squadron in Yuma. As you see, with all those squadrons, we're actually fairly well geographically dispersed. We've got South Carolina, we've got Arizona, we've got California, and in January of 2017, we're going to move VMF-A 121 over to Iwakuni, Japan. And so introduce this aircraft and this capability to the Western Pacific. I think that's a major milestone. And in 2018, both VMF-A 121 and 211 will go ahead and deploy. So when we talk about maturity of the aircraft and the capabilities it brings, those are coming to the combatant commanders here in the very near future. And daily I field questions from folks about what capabilities we're bringing and their thirst for employing this aircraft in an operational environment. Full up deployments just like we do every single day with our legacy aircraft. That is coming in the incredibly near future to the Marine Corps and to U.S. services in the joint environment. So that's where we stand right now. The next thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is about shipboard and expeditionary operations. So a lot of people say, why does the Marine Corps need this airplane? What does this bring? What is a service that prides itself in operating in austere environments needs something this fancy in those environments? And I can tell you directly, the threat environment we face, the proliferation of advanced surface-to-air and air-to-air threats out there make it incredibly dangerous to operate even in austere and expeditionary environments that we've done in the past. The countries that are out there that have these capabilities that are potential adversaries in the future, they require us to gain access to them, and the only way to do that is with advanced capabilities like the F-35 brings. Additionally, most of you are familiar with the large deck aircraft carriers that the Navy fields. The Marine Corps and the Navy together field amphibious assault ships. So by putting 5th generation capabilities onto amphibious assault ships, that allows us to effectively double the amount of big deck aircraft carriers we have. So in the past, where those assault ships went forward without advanced capabilities like the F-35, now we have the capability to put 16 to 20 of those aircraft and field a pretty effective 5th generation strike force off of our amphibious assault ships. In the expeditionary environment, the Marine Corps excels at taking our assets at sea or CONUS-based assets and moving them over and establishing air bases. And what the STOVL capabilities the F-35 bring is the ability to use many more airfields, be them ones we build ourselves or ones that already exist out there in the world. So that allows us to forward base those, move them rapidly, and get outside of the timeline of targeting by our adversaries. So that's an incredibly important capability, not just for the Marine Corps, but for the entire Joint Force and Coalition Force. And then the final thing I'm going to talk about briefly is the interoperability and the ability of this airplane across the variants. So as I said earlier, I've flown all 3 variants. I've got my most hours in the B model, but I've got over 200 hours in the A model doing all kinds of flight test work, mission systems, and flight sciences work. And I've seen the entire envelope of the airplane. The one that's been advertised since 2001 when the contract is signed. Okay, and I've also seen all the mission systems, all the Gucci things that exist back there, and employ those in environments to assess them. And what the thing is, bringing this airplane with the same exact capabilities to all these services and to all these countries, we will seamlessly integrate, just like a bunch of Legos plugging together when we go out to a forward operating base and go into a coalition environment, the fact that I can talk to a Norwegian or I can talk to an Air Force guy and we know exactly what we're talking about, we're planning together, we're exchanging data files across, we're sharing that information, that's incredibly important, especially in the early days of a chaotic environment in warfare. So the fact that we could train at exercises in the States like Red Flag together and then go ahead and go forward into combat operations or other contingency operations with a seamless integration, that's, to me, the greatest asset that this airplane brings. It's ultimately the people and the units that operate this airplane that the fact that we have a same baseline going forward, that is going to create a step change in capabilities across the Joint Coalition Force. Brilliant. So thank you for your time.
Call sign Tintin.
Thank you. I'm lucky enough that they've landed now, hopefully. So I'm from a small nation that has decided to go and purchase this gorgeous aircraft that you see here. My background is flying the F-16 since '97, and being from Norway, I'm from a country that is used to having only one platform, being the F-16 in the past, and this is also what's going to be for us with the F-35. So for us, the F-35 represents the sole fighter aircraft that we're going to have in our inventory. That means that we need to have a fully capable multi-role aircraft, and this is by far the best airframe for that, and that is why we've bought the F-35. We have quite a bit experience on with being a small nation. We have experience on coalition warfare. We are actually very dependent on it. And one of the reasons that we are, what we do is we participate in coalition warfare, hoping also that if Norway needs this, if we need something back home, we need support, then we can have an interoperable unit coming to our nation and helping out. Of course, being from Norway, high north, we are operating in the Arctic, north of the Arctic. It's a very harsh environment. We've had great success with the F-16, and we are moving that forward with the F-35, and that is what we're basing our future Air Force on. One of the things that this aircraft gives me as a pilot in the cockpit that I never had before is there are the sensors and the information that has been talked about. We have new sensors now that actually give me a true all-weather capability. At least for the Norwegian Air Force, we've not had that capability before. We do not have other platforms that we can use to get information about what's going on the battlefield, on the ground, or on the surface. And with the F-35, we now have sensors that will give us that situational awareness. And for those of you who've been to Norway, you know that the weather can be even worse than this country. So it's quite good for us to have that capability, and that will be a game changer also for Norway. We are in Norway it's very important for us to have this aircraft interoperable, not just with the other air forces, but also with the Army and the Navy, because we need to create an environment where we in our own nation can operate freely. And we have such a vast coastline that anyone who wants to inflict something on Norway could put equipment outside our coast. We need to be able to operate freely within our own airspace. And the F-35, with the ability to be invincible to the opposition, gives us that opportunity to be to operate freely within our own territory, and that's really important to Norway.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Yeah.